We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Destined for an Early Grave is the fourth book in Jeaniene Frost's Night Huntress series and was published in 2009. Just as readable as the previous books, this installment continues to serve up amazing plots and amazing character development, drawing us in from the very beginning. When we first meet back up with 28-year-old human-vampire hybrid Cat, it's been 6 years since the events of the first book, and she most recently quit her job working for her uncle, who ran a secret branch of Homeland Security that hunted supernatural creatures who posed a vicious threat to humans. Cat and Bones are enjoying some much-needed downtime. Who can blame them? They fought master vampires, zombies, murderous ghouls, all for the sake of the greater good. It was time for them to nurture their relationship and pour into each other a little bit. However, things get a bit exciting for the two. As soon as the book opens up, Cat is being plagued by nightmares. She is dreaming of a very powerful ancient French vampire named Gregor, more powerful than Bones in fact. Gregor claims that he is Cat's rightful husband, not Bones. If you remember, Bones and Cat got married at the end of the second book in a blood ceremony, binding themselves to one another for all eternity. However, this vampire, Gregor, claims that he and Cat performed the same ceremony with one another when she was 16. Only, she doesn't remember it. In fact, Cat does not remember the weeks she spent with Gregor at all. Why doesn't Cat remember ever being married to Gregor? Because Menkeres, Bones' grandsire, put an end to Cat and Gregor's relationship. Menkeres is thousands years old, and not only does he read minds, but he sees visions of the future. Menkeres knew that Cat would wield massive power, and he interceded when Gregor tried to intercept Cat and this potential power. Like Menkeres, Gregor also has visions of the future, which is how he knew of Cat. He knew she was powerful, and he knew that she was destined to be with Bones. Gregor found her in Ohio and compelled her mother, Justina, to release Cat to his care. He had his clutches in a young, naive Cat and nearly got away with it. But Menkeres took Cat away from Gregor and imprisoned him after altering her memory of the incident. After Menkeres wiped Cat's mind, he implanted her back into her life on that cherry orchard in Ohio. But now Gregor was back with a ghoul army behind him, and he was staking his claim on Cat. What made Gregor even more dangerous is the fact that he is the Dream Snatcher. He has the ability to transport people to him wherever he is in the world, as long as he is able to make contact with them in their dreams, literally snatching them in their sleep. From the very beginning of the book, Gregor is attempting to make contact with Cat. As you can imagine, Cat is confused. She has no recollection of her time with Gregor. Not to mention, she is disturbed. She loved Bones and only Bones. Unfortunately for them, Gregor does not care. He will not stop at anything until he has Cat in his possession. He has no problem risking a war for her. He continues to press his claim regardless of how much Cat and Bones openly deny it. In this book, we see our two lovers deal with more conflict than they ever have before. The threat of Gregor causes major dissent in their relationship, and we even see their trust in one another waver. Not only does Cat and Bones argue over how to handle Gregor, but vampires are very territorial in nature. The fact that he could lose Cat quite frankly scares Bones. They nearly spend the entire book arguing, if I'm being honest, and it was quite worrisome, not only for me, but for the other characters as well. Needless to say, the threat of Gregor grows to the point where they are attacked in the streets of Paris, and Bones is very nearly killed. From there, with the help of Menkeres and Bones' best friend Spade, Bones and Cat go on the run across Europe. Eventually, their running brings them back to America, to New Orleans, to parley with the Queen of Orleans, Marie Laveau, one of the most powerful ghouls in the world. New Orleans was her city, and no violence was sanctioned unless it was with her permission. It was time for the supernatural community to pick a side. It was clear that Gregor was going to determinedly press his claim, and it was also clear that Bones was not going to let Cat go. Bones was a very powerful vampire who not only sired hundreds of his own vampires, but his allies grew his numbers by hundreds, maybe even thousands. Gregor himself is even more ancient than Bones, as far as vampire years are concerned, and even more powerful. For all intents and purposes, I think Gregor may have the upper hand. Be that as it may, the undead community had a decision to make. They'd be roped up in all of this one way or another, but they had to choose. Choose who they will back in the war that Gregor and Bones intended to wage over Cat. Both vampire and ghouls had to make the decision. This is what leads the two lovers to seek out the help of Marie Laveau. It was important to get her on their side. As the Queen of Ghouls, Marie Laveau could influence a whole portion of the undead community, which would make all the difference if this conflict actually comes to blows. What Cat was not expecting, though, was the amount of ghosts wandering around in New Orleans. Cat is no stranger to ghosts. Early in her training with Bones, she met a sentient ghost who helped them unearth information that brought down the trafficker Hennessy and the dirty governor, Ethan Oliver. Cat, who sees ghosts, previously learned that some ghosts stay tethered to our world for many reasons. Winston, the ghost she met previously, was so angry at the time of his death by hanging that a part of him stayed behind. So, it was no surprise that here in New Orleans, a city crawling with ghosts, Cat made a new friend, a lonely ghost, desperate for companionship, so desperate in fact that he agreed to stick with them. He even comes in handy, helping them navigate their way through Marie's New Orleans. His name was Fabian, and he is so endearing that I would be surprised if anyone reading this book disliked him. Ghosts are ignored by the supernatural community, roaming around with no one to speak with or interact with. Ghouls and vampires tend to treat them with indifference, largely ignoring them. However, when Bones was instructed by Marie Laveau to stay behind while Cat met the Queen herself, gallant Fabian accompanied her. Part of the way. Cat entered the cemetery, and after going through an underground tunnel, she finally made the acquaintance of Marie. Like a scene out of The Matrix, the two women, ghoul and hybrid, had much to discuss. Marie died in 1881, and not only was she a ghoul, but she was a practitioner of voodoo. In fact, she was also called the Voodoo Queen. But imagine Cat's surprise when she met a middle-aged woman who truly resembled the Oracle from The Matrix. Cat spoke before she can catch herself. Oracle? Cat asked. And on cue, Marie points at Cat and says, bingo. The women seem to bond over this exchange, The Matrix being one of their favorite movies. Marie goes on to ask Cat if she is the one. Marie asked this for a reason. Cat's anonymity has been ruined for a while. Rumors about her have been running rampant in the undead world. One of those rumors, that Cat has the intention of becoming a ghoul. That she intends to combine her half-breed ability with the power of ghouls, making her the first ghoul-vampire hybrid ever known. Combining her vampire strengths with ghoul strengths without the vampiric aversion to silver, Cat may have unlimited power. Why was Marie worried about all this? Why were all ghouls worried about this? Well, essentially, they were worried that Cat was a threat to their species. We know our girl Cat. She has no intention of becoming a ghoul-vampire hybrid. Come on, this is a girl who barely wants to be a vampire hybrid. I don't think she intends on making herself even more strange. Fortunately for Cat, Cat was able to not only convince Marie that she was not coming for her throne, but she was also able to convince Marie that she never wanted to cause any chaos in the ghoul community. Eventually, Marie agrees to back Cat and Bones in this war against Gregor. I guess it's safe to say the Matrix reference worked in Cat's favor. In fact, Marie plainly says this. She says, "Of all things you'd say first to me, quoting a scene from my favorite movie was the last I expected. Go in peace, Cat." I wish this was enough for Gregor to back off, but it wasn't. One interesting little tidbit you should know is that Gregor's vampire blood was the blood that raised Marie as a ghoul. So her fealty is ultimately to him, but he hasn't released her from his line after all these years. So it is in her best interest to side with Cat and Bones, with the hopes that they finish her sire off, allowing her to become master of her own ghoul line. Things escalate enough that against her better judgment, instead of fighting Gregor in her dreams, Cat lets him take her. Since Gregor is the only one who can give Cat her memory back, she thinks it's a good idea to leave Bones, get her memories, and put an end to Gregor's claims. As you can imagine, this shatters Bones. He wants Cat to trust him, but like the end of the first book, halfway to the grave, she leaves him, thinking what she is doing is in both of their best interest. Bones doesn't care if she's trying to help. What this does is makes him think he's a fool. He thinks that deep down, Cat's love for him wavers, that deep down, she doesn't want to be with him because of what he is, what she is. During her time with Gregor this time, she learns that there has been another half-breed like her centuries ago. But most importantly, she learned of her lost time with Gregor. She learned nothing more than the fact that Gregor was an overbearing, erratic, gaslighting chauvinist. He fed on Cat and even almost lured her into bed. Although she did develop feelings for Gregor, she was 16, impressionable with no life experience. Gregor preyed on Cat, preyed on her potential. He was a predator, and it doesn't take Cat much time to realize this fact. Unfortunately, the ceremony was performed though, in front of 6 witnesses at that, Gregor's henchmen. Gregor and Cat cut their palms and clasped their hands, saying the words, "By my blood, I am your wife." He convinces her to do this by trying to minimize the impact of this act. He tells her that the ceremony has no legal binding in her world, that it has no meaning as far as meanings and customs are concerned. But before they can consummate their marriage, Mankiris comes in. He detains and imprisons Gregor and successfully implants Cat back to her normal life after wiping her memories of the incident. Mankiris stopped Gregor from interfering with her destiny. She was meant to be by Bones' side. Despite remembering her time with Gregor now, her love for Bones overshadowed it all. She winds up subduing Gregor, and worried that he has a trap set for Bones, instead of calling Bones to her aid, she calls Vlad. Vlad Tepesh, Vlad the Impaler, or Dracula as some lore would call him, was a friend of Cat. She met him during the events of the last book, and the two respect each other very much, despite his volatile relationship with Bones. He was a very old and powerful master vampire, harnessing the power of fire through his hands, and he was Cat's first call. I wish the two of them finished Gregor right then and there, but they didn't. They left Gregor alive and well, and Vlad took Cat back to Bones. This doesn't quell Gregor though. He replenishes the ranks of his ghoul army and continues to spread rumors surrounding Cat and the possibility of her becoming a vampire-ghoul hybrid. These rumors gain traction, causing uproar in the undead world. So much so, their only solution is to consider turning Cat into a vampire. That was the only way to appease the worried ghoul community, to turn her into a full vampire, eliminating the possibility of her becoming a vampire-ghoul hybrid. Besides, if she became a full vampire, Gregor couldn't track her anymore through her dreams. Cat has some apprehensions. All her life, her mother made her think that being a vampire was evil, that vampires were demonic. She had to grow up under the resentful gaze of her mother, hiding her abilities and differences. Can she handle fully turning into something that she spent most of her life feeling disdain for? Kat decides that if turning into a vampire will quell the uproar of the undead world, then maybe that's what she had to do. But it wouldn't be quite that simple. When Bones drains Kat of her blood and subsequently fills her with his own, everyone expected the newly formed vampire to devour the blood bags they had on hand. But our girl Kat never does things the normal way, does she? She was disgusted by the human blood. She could not stomach it. Instead, our new vampire Kat only feeds on vampire blood. In order to provide sustenance to Kat while in hiding, Bones has to drink blood bags himself and then let Kat feed on him. But Kat was now a vampire. If she wasn't powerful before, she was certainly powerful now. She smelled smells that she didn't smell before, felt strength that she never felt before. When she and Bones made love, her senses were so heightened that her entire being crackled with passion. And when they trained with one another, sparring, she bested him. Kat was a vampire force to be reckoned with. It only took 3 days for Kat to control her bloodlust, meaning that she can now focus on the issue of Gregor, who now had her mother, Justina, captive. He snatched Justina from her dreams. Kat's fear has come to life, that her mother would be harmed because of her, a fear she had to live with ever since her grandparents were massacred in Ohio 6 years ago. And now, she had to face the reality that her mother's life is in danger because of her. To get her mother back, they first had to set up a formal meeting, a coming out party of sorts, introducing Kat to the undead community as a newly turned vampire, no longer a threat to the ghoul community. Interestingly enough, Gregor shows up to this event with Kat's mother on a leash. To Kat's surprise, and to the surprise of every creature in attendance, including Justina's boyfriend Rodney, Justina, who hated vampires, was turned into a vampire, turned by Gregor to spite Kat for leaving him, disobeying him. Rules of engagement be damned. It was time to do something about Gregor once and for all. With Fabian's help, they are able to find where Gregor is hiding. There were over a dozen of Gregor's people in that house, but that didn't stop Bones, Spade, and Rodney from entering the house to dole out justice. They lit up the house with explosives and took on the horde of vampires. Eventually, Rodney locates Justina and carries her out of the house. But when Gregor faces off with Rodney, Rodney is no match. Rodney sets Justina down and gives her a loving caress on the cheek before facing Gregor, ready to defend his woman. However, Gregor proves to be too fast, too powerful for the ghoul, and shortly after facing off, Rodney's head was separated from his body and lying on the floor, the only way to kill a ghoul. Gregor now faced Kat, ready to make her pay for her insolence. But Kat, who fed on Vlad's blood earlier, absorbed some of his pyro power. The rage she felt in that moment for her mother, for Rodney, triggered her to engulf the entire home in flames, the entire estate, grass, lawn, and all. Soon, she focused her newfound firepower on Gregor, unrelenting in her fiery punishment. Kat let the fire flow from her hands, burning him to a crisp, allowing the small group to leave. Because Kat didn't finish Gregor off just then, Bones challenged Gregor to a duel, which he could not decline. The formal duel was held at Mankari's house, and there were several master vampires in attendance to witness. The two master vampires flew at each other, crashing into each other at unearthly speeds. Silver cut into flesh as they hacked at one another. Bones even received a dagger to the eye in the duel, but it grew back as he continued his attacks. But Gregor was more ancient than Bones' 220 years. Soon, Gregor had Bones on his back. Just as Gregor goes to deal the final blow to Bones' heart, Kat couldn't take it anymore. Her new power seeped from her, and she exploded his head. Nothing was left on Gregor's shoulder but a fiery blaze, courtesy of Kat, immediately ending the threat. As far as Kat's firepower goes, because her heart still beats when her emotions are running high, Mankari's thinks that life still clings to Kat, which is why she rejects human blood and can only stomach vampire blood. When she fed on Vlad when she was hungry, she indeed absorbed some of his firepower. Kat's mother? Well, Justina was having a terrible time, and she consistently tries to finish herself off. In fact, she repeatedly asked Kat to deal the finishing blow. She didn't want to live this life as the thing she hated the most. Turns out, when she was turned by Gregor, he unleashed a blood-crazed Justina on innocent humans. She fed on people, tore them apart in her craze, and she just could not live with herself and that memory. And then there was Rodney. I should make it abundantly clear that Justina was not the only one mourning Rodney. Rodney wasn't just Bones' friend. Bones found a 6-year-old orphan Rodney wandering the streets of Poland. He raised him, cared for him, loved him as a son, and eventually helped turn him into a ghoul. Rodney sacrificed himself to save Justina. There was no way Bones was going to let Justina throw his sacrifice away. They would all find a way to move on, together.